Hello, everybody. It has been a while. Personally, I enjoyed my break as much as I could. Um, Fighting off sudden cold, but honestly, I think it's passing. So, thank the Holy Spirit on that one. Honestly, I was feeling like crap for most of the day until I started praying on it. So, just gonna overcome. Though I'm not helping myself by staying up so late, but I had homework to do, and ooh wee dooey, was it a doozy? Oh gosh. I'm trying to basically not prove a conspiracy theory while proving conspiracy theory in my own sarcastic kind of way. And I can't help myself, so I end up making more work for myself than I need to. But it's actually going quite well, even though I have no clue how. I don't know why I do the things I do, but sometimes I feel as though it's not wrong to have the urge to want to do what's right. And so for my assignment that we have in class, we're supposed to do a risk assessment and analysis on a particular incident or emergency crisis that's happened in recent history. I chose the Capitol riots. I didn't realize that the documents are the fracked. Um, the GAO documentation is pretty funny. It's pretty clear cut, decisive, it's formal, so it's good information to use. But it's basically them accusing the FBI and everybody else of not having their crap together. And then the FBI and everybody else just being like, no, we have our crap together. Don't even look our way. Don't even do anything. And here's the thing is, and this is all based off of what happened immediately after the incident. So this is like within the first couple months, like March and stuff. I can't find documentation on all the recent stuff that's happened about the Capitol riots, like the fact that the FBI tried to kidnap a governor and sabotaged a bunch of people by looping them into a white supremacist group in order to do it. But either way, I don't want to get jumped off of YouTube. So let's just say that for the case of what I do for my job, YouTube, this is my work. I work doing risk analysis and emergency management. This is what I'm trying to do. I'm in education for this. Do school. I got books for it. Like, don't knock me off, please. Like, I'm not trying to be a heathen. Leave me alone. I left. I backed off. You guys let me at this. So, pretty much for the caseload that I'm working with, I have to go off of very scant documentation from the government, very biased documentation from the media, either way, whichever way I go. And then the documentation that I have that's the real sweet spot for what I want to do with this document, I don't even know if I can use it. So I'm gonna have to talk to Teach on that one. Because I'm basically just gonna come in with this giant bat just being like, yeah, so why is the FBI trying to kidnap a governor? And why weren't they being prosecuted with the highest extent of law and treason? And why wasn't the FBI seized for this and all their documentation on anything relevant to such type of operations going on released? Considering that we know that they have had operatives in the KKK and other white supremacist groups for the last 16 years, I can't fathom how there's somehow a white supremacy right when the FBI stands to pose, gain a lot of power. But anyway, again, this is my work. Just saying, if I disappear, guys, again, it might not be purposeful. I might actually just get murked for doing my homework. I'm sorry. But for the case of what we're working on today, because I am taking quite a bit of your guys' time, thank you. Anyways, I've been watching a lot of Paul VanderKlay videos. I've been watching a lot of videos in general. My break has been just school, crunching books as much as I can will myself to read. I've just honestly been so tired. It was just so much out of me just to kind of overcome my last few like hang-ups and just get myself ready to even start launching a lot of the things I want to do with my life. But it's like these last few weeks, I really feel like the Holy Spirit's actually in me. It's kind of nice. Like It's a difference between if you were a kid and you ever had one of those like fake gum packet things where you pull it and it electrocutes you. It's kind of like that feeling where you get this energy that's just in you. It's like an energy of peace, certainty, direction. Like I'm sitting here panicking about how I'm gonna get this assignment done, and then it's just like I prayed, and then just take control. And even with this video, I didn't really want to make it tonight, but prayed on it. Holy Spirit's like, just let me take control. You do talking, just let the words come out. And honestly, I feel like that's something that I've learned over the years, just for the many different occasions that I've had to just learn to become okay with my body and overcome different things. As some of my constant YouTuber, Patreon subscriber people may have caught on, my health is not necessarily the best. I have a thing going on where I sporadically just kind of have palpitations of the heart, and my brain just kind of has a bunch of issues, and got back spasms, shit going on with my legs, part of my French, just a bunch of stuff. Um, and yet, I feel blessed because I never had these problems as bad as until I really started to realize that life cannot be won through strength alone. And yet somehow I still maintain a lot of strength for somebody who's been beaten the hell out of over these years. I mean, shoot, people look at me now and they're like, what happened to you? You used to be so ripped. I mean, shoot, what happened to me? I went bald. Ah, now the hair's going back. Stress is going away. Health is starting to recover. It's just life. It creeps up on you. And I realize now that I'm 28. I managed to make it out at 27 without getting myself killed. So I'm kind of happy. Feel like it's just moving forward from here. But if I drop dead, then I hope that at least I left some good impressions on people before I go. So the psychedelic worldview, I think, is a very interesting topic, and Jordan Peterson talks about it a lot. Of course, Craig Hughes mentioned it a little bit, but again, as you've noted, Paul, there's a certain hesitation to Craig. And sorry, I'm American as hell, so I am not even gonna try to pronounce some of these names. I know better. I'm not gonna butcher it. I apologize to you, great people. I just I'm not gonna embarrass myself more than I already am. But yeah, like I find those conversations very interesting. Well, Vervegi, I have not had a chance to really like actually watch many of his videos. From what I watched for you, I find him very compelling, and I think his arguments are very compelling. I think I've watched one or two of his videos. I think one or two of his interviews, and at least one of the interviews I remember, it was very compelling how he was making an argument. The person who's interviewing. Oh no, it was for you because it was the video on yoga, and you were doing multiple viewpoints on experiences with the metaphysical, and I think that that type of subject is very compelling. For a little bit of my background and probably more of a background for people that may have gotten from me before. I grew up um, when I was very young. I went to Catholic school for like, as far as I remember, maybe like a month or two, and then it was very easily seen that we were not good kids, so we didn't stay there long. We were very, very rambunctious. Um, so for most of my life, I grew up pretty much atheist or agnostic. Um, my mom still held on to Christianity, so we like kind of knew of God and stuff, but it wasn't really like a center for of life. I think, if anything, I accidentally stumbled upon God, usually just because I was so inquisitive. I'd just dig through all the books and be like, what the hell is this giant golden text thing? Okay, let me read it. And I think the very first thing I read was Revelations. It scared the hell out of me so much I never read the Bible again for like, I think, 12 in my teens. So for me, I did not have a good view towards God and Christianity at first. I was like, why the hell are you trying to murder us all? So I was like, I'm not gonna get on his bad side, but I'm not necessarily trying to go to bad for you, dude. Like, whoa. stay away, stay in your own lane. So it's like for me, I didn't know enough. And I think that it was for the best because I think if I was exposed to Christianity when I was younger, I would have been like a lot of my peers were. I would have loathed it. I would have loathed a lot of the experiences. And I think maybe that's probably what happened to my brothers because I think maybe they had more of an experience with Christianity than me. But I think for me, my biggest experience with Christianity was through Mel Gibson. So I mean, I watched Passion of the Christ, and for me, that was my Odyssey in a lot of ways. Like Greek children would listen to the Odyssey of the compelling story of a man who gives everything to get back home. For me, this was the compelling story of a man who gave everything for a nation that does not even acknowledge what he's doing, but it's so great because he does it because it's the right thing to do. And for me, that was so compelling as a child that I remember saying to myself that it was like, I remember crying and not necessarily praying, but I was like, I've watched a lot of war films at that time. And of course, like for me, it's like war films for valor. I come from a military family, so it's like sacrifice. I understand sacrifice, but that was a sacrifice. And not a sacrifice I think I was willing to take. Like, I imagine myself getting shot in war and stuff like that. And I'm like, what, 7 or 8 when I watched this movie? So I kind of had a conception of death by that point. I had a good idea what it's like to get riddled with bullets, and at least as a child could. And for me, watching Passion of the Christ, it was like, oh, and I think I watched it in like the Aramaic version, so I definitely was like reading subtitles and just like it was such a translucent kind of. It was probably my first experience with the psychedelic realm that wasn't through lucid dreaming or some of my more night terror related dreams as a kid. Um, I've always suffered from insomnia. I had bouts of sleepwalking, different types of issues with sleeping as a child. So for me, it's not odd that I don't sleep much. If anything, it's odd when I sleep a lot. If anything, it's a pleasure. I enjoy when I sleep, but it's also enjoyable to know that I can stay awake sometimes for long enough to keep watch. Um, but that experience with the supernatural, I think, for me, came more through the night terrors, the dreams, and the experiences with what I would say are like shadow people and things like that, though that may be an aspect of lucid dreaming. Not things I would want to get into, but in terms of psychedelics and stuff, if anything, there is a connection that I would draw upon later. So that's why I'm kind of premising with a little bit of these kind of sporadic moments as a child of though I'm an atheist, there's something else out there that I just can't really put my head around, but there's nobody else around me paying attention to it, so why should I? But at the same time, in the back of my head, I'm kind of searching for, well, what's not in place? What doesn't seem right here? And so I'm always kind of looking for the thread to pull on reality. And I think for me, even as a child, that kind of led me into a lot of like rabbit holes. I remember trying to figure out more about what the things I used to dream about. I would find myself looking through the library for different symbolism, things, books, for anything. I would just read because I knew reading would gain me knowledge. And of course, I mean, we didn't really have the internet hardcore in the '90s, so I mean, it still was, I'm old enough to, have to suffer a little bit to learn. So, I found a book on close encounters and supernatural cryptics or something like that. And I remember reading about the Mothman, and it's like, dude, no, no, no. I was so doped out of that, and with a lot of things that I experienced in sleep, I was like, no, no, I can't deal with any type of metaphysical world. So I think a lot of my childhood was trying to chase a sense of normalcy, even though I'm always drawn to a thread. Um, Most of my life, though, I would say, other than just sleep issues and things like that, it wasn't until I reached high school where I was able to actually have another kind of psychedelic experience. Although, again, this wasn't through psychedelics, this was through a Native American ritual. So, through an odd set of circumstances, I managed to meet a group of people who liked going on ritualistic sweats. And so, by chance, I was taken over there. I fasted. We drank the water. We kind of rested. We burned all the incense and the teepee that we set up, and then we went inside for a few hours. Came back out. Went back inside. And it was like, as you go into there, from what I remember, it was surreal. It was kind of like a birthing process in a sense. you go out from the light, you go from this uncertainty inside, and you center yourself, you listen to everybody talk to each other, and just then there's silence. Then you just start just drifting out in the middle of nothingness. And it's like there was a point where I was asked to draw upon an ancestral spirit, and as an African American, I honestly could not draw upon anything. I remember my mom's cross, and it was funny because for me, I still wasn't a Christian. If anything, maybe a Gnostic more at that point, if anything. But I was more into the occult and magic, and more into starting to get more into my paganistic phase of life, where I was starting to really like settle into the fact that I liked studying magic. I liked studying that kind of aspect of the supernatural metaphysical world. But for me, that was more of an aspect of science somehow can explain this. So how were alchemists, trying to make gold out of lead, So for me, that was what drew me into a lot of that stuff, was trying to connect science to the metaphysical world to try to understand maybe if that was maybe the niche in the system that I'm looking for. Um, but yeah, drawing upon ancestral spirits, something wickedly weird. It's like just mist, and I just remember like dark navy and just this drifting feeling, and it was like Jesus. Okay, like I didn't have a sophisticated name for him. I just Jesus. I didn't even have like white Jesus pop up. It was just Jesus. Just that feeling of just floating. And they were like, and then I felt embarrassed because I was like, I'm sorry, I know that that's not really like that. And they're like, no, if that's what you feel, then that's wonderful. Like that's an honest from the heart thing. And I'm like, I have no clue where that came from. I think it's just because it comes from like my family. And they're like, well, that's an ancestral spirit. He protects you. Good, own it. I was like, how? So for me, I think my experience with God was more like I guess I'm supposed to serve you because my family did. So what do you want me to do? Oh, do you want me to do all this extra stuff? Like, so for me, I guess I was drawn more into Christianity as I saw a connection to it that wasn't necessarily even from the church at first, but it was always reaching me back towards something that was communal, a communal essence, in a sense, the ancestral essence of the community. I think drew me back towards what I would say now is Yahweh or Yeshua, because Christ is, the branch. He joins us together. He's Yahweh's salvation for all of humanity. So when I draw upon that kind of more mystical, if you want to call it that kind of psychedelic essence that I would call, for me, I call it the Holy Spirit, but for the sake of talking to my atheistic friends, I try to say it's more like a psychedelic essence or like a feeling or hope, the welling of hope or things like that. I try to make it more jazzed up, though I don't necessarily enjoy that. Um, but the feeling is kind of drawing upon those previous experiences in the wild, in the wilderness, with God. And I would say that other than the few times where I'd go with my mom to church, I think around my teenage years, I'd go with her because she started going to church with my parents got divorced. And so I spent a lot of time with my father, reading, doing my science stuff, reading lots of Wikipedia at that point because we had the internet, baby. Um, and then, yeah, with my mom, we do church things, and I would learn about philosophy and, about religious moral theory. And for me, I think I really took to it because it was like I didn't see a difference. There was no difference. There was no two sides telling me, "Oh my God, you're a Christian." No, God, you're a science lover. Because nobody really ever called me out on it. And I was very quiet as a kid when it came to that kind of stuff. So I was just like, unless I was like around you at home, yeah, I'm not gonna go around causing crap. So I skated between both worlds without even realizing there was a conflict until I started dealing with my peers as more getting towards my adult years. and a lot of them were ex-Christians. So for me, I was just flabbergasted that they would have these horrible experiences with God and the Bible and their faith, and I'm like, I'd never seen that before. As a scientist, I've only ever seen examples of Christians who got their crap together, people who had gone off the streets and went away from drugs and got their life together in God. So it's like I never could conceptualize that people could get worse from God. So that just reinforced all my fears. So it was really weird for me to go rubber banding back and forth. I think I would say maybe I'm a rubber band Christian at the beginning. Thank God, God finally like snapped me and I hit the wall so freaking hard I flat. Um, because that for me was how I think I really found God in the last few years of my life. Like I would say around 2017. Yeah, around 2017, I think I truly had a connection with God. But up until that point, it was just forging alliances at that point and making pacts. And of course, the Bible, I learned later, go figure my foolish self. If you make a pact with God, it doesn't matter if you don't keep to your side of the bargain. Like, you still made a pact with God and he kept to his end. So it's like, once you really think about the weight of how much you ask God from in your life, it's like, Jesus Christ, I deserve to die. And then at that point, it's like, be honest, I reached a point where I wanted to die. And when you reach a point you want to die, you kind of realize that you either put the bullet in your mouth and eat it, or you decide to die for something better and you just give your life to it. And that's been the hardest thing for me is trying not to be selfish with the life that's been given to me. So when I talk about the psychedelic portion of my life, I don't want people to think this is something I take lightly or that I'm encouraging people to do. And I don't want you to do that either, Paul. I think that everybody who has hesitation towards it should. It's not something easy to go into it. I got into it through really the chaotic aspects of my life, not the peaceful aspects. So, rewinding back to end of high school, I started getting into theater. I started getting into a lot of type of things and partying and stuff. And of course, I would say that I started honestly my introduction to smoking like marijuana and drinking and stuff. That was actually way younger in my life. I started drinking 14, 13, somewhere around there. Um, somewhere like around when I could actually get my hands on stuff because there's really nobody around at the house at the time. And then, yeah, like marijuana and stuff, I started smoking that on my own, like 16, 17. Whenever I felt comfortable actually buying it from somebody who I felt I wasn't screwing me over for it. So, yeah, I would just start smoking in private. I drink in private. For me, partying was something that I did because I realized that's what you do in order to keep up appearances with people. Because otherwise, you're weird, even though I like people. Like, I like talking to people. I just don't like dealing with people's crap. So, a lot of, I think, what drew me into that lifestyle was just me trying to just do what everybody else was trying to do, following the world. Um, Same thing for the psychedelics. Um, I went to a lot of burn parties. I did a lot of, wild things while I was doing that kind of stuff. And a lot of things I regret. Most of it I regret. Um, and it wasn't really until I fell flat on my ass. I mean, I joined the military after I sobered up for a bit. That was a good 3 years where I was sober and just kicking ass. Got fit, got rocked. I was fine. I thought I found God. Thought I had my life together. And honestly, I started seeing seams at the edge of my life, things that were inconsistent, things that I knew were false in me, but I didn't know why, and I started questioning them hard. Now I realize that it was a lot of chastising from the devil, a lot of generational curses that I needed to work out, a lot of personal issues I needed to accept, and a lot of things I just needed to actually go to therapy about, which thank God I've gone to therapy since then. And thank God I found God since then. But back then, I thought I had everything together. So when I got hit with these things, I was like, why are these seams there? So I started testing myself, pushing myself to areas where honestly I ended up getting myself into reprobation. I became, you know, very self destructive. and I destroyed everything that I had built up for myself in terms of career and life, totally military and everything, just because I just couldn't hold everything together. And as my life itself was getting chaotic and things were happening to family members, you self destruct. So for me, it's like living out here in California, I see homeless people around me. I understand a lot of how you can just fall that low and not be able to really want to get up. I've just been blessed that I've had people to be there to catch me when I fall. And that's because of him. So it's like when I got to the point where I finally just had nothing, I broke. I remember my my next psychedelic experience that I would say was a religious or spiritual experience was I wanted to understand why it was that I even was still trying to hold on to God with everything that I went through and put myself through. I didn't really understand why I was even holding on to the idea of being a Christian when I felt like I was so far from even ever being able to live up to that lifestyle. And I still didn't know enough about God back then. I didn't know anything really. I thought I did. I thought I was learning because I read the Bible, but honestly, I didn't read the Bible with a Christian heart. So I was just reading it with the same kind of heart, that looks at it as literary, advice. Um, sorry, it's still messed up. But so I ended up watching The Passion of the Christ again because I was trying to connect with that childhood feeling of wonder and wanting to sacrifice everything for the right cause. Because I felt like I just wanted to be back on the right direction so badly. And then for some reason, I watched the Martin Scorsese The Last Temptation of Christ, and then something just broke in me because I'm spoiling this for everybody. So if you haven't watched it, you should pause it and watch it. It's actually quite good. And the cheesy rock music included. There is some nudity, so I would say viewer discretion is advised. But yeah, Martin Scorsese's The Last Temptation of Christ. There's a good gotcha moment where Jesus decides he doesn't want to go through with it, and I can feel that in the story as the way the narrative paints it out. I understand after everything that he kind of compromises, and figures out, tries out to do, and levels up to do. It's like fair enough, man. Take that risk. You were convinced that you could. I probably would fall for it too. And so I'm watching it. It's like there's a point where, out of all things, Judas comes out of the cuts, and it's just like, look at you. You are not supposed to be a normal man. Sitting here looking old and feeble on a bed dying? You were supposed to die on a cross for everyone's sins. Now look at us. We're cracked and like everybody's burning to death. Everything's collapsing. The world's ending. And Jesus is just like, I thought I was supposed to just be a normal person. I thought I had a chance to be like you guys. And he's like, we were trying to be like you. You convinced us that we could. And we gave everything. I was ready to even betray you if you put it away from your path. But you convinced me to go through with it. It's like, oh my gosh, dude, like the ending is just so got you. And it's like, oh, it broke me because I was just like, I got gotten. I thought I knew God. I don't know who the hell God is. And I want to know because I don't know what the hell I want. And I got so angry, so upset. And I was just walked out there. And at this time, I lived over near a bunch of hills in Cordelia. So, I don't mind talking because now nobody can locate where I live. I live in the middle of nowhere. Probably anybody could probably spoof me, so who cares? But still, uh, went out to the bunch of hills out there. If you really go deep out there, there's coyotes, there's all kinds of stuff, and it's out in the middle of winter. So I wrapped myself in a bunch of blankets and I just trudge out there, piss in the wind. I just walk for like a good 30 minutes out in the middle of nowhere because I'm like, that's what they did in the past, right? They just walked out in the middle of nowhere and screamed at the sky. So I went out in the middle of nowhere and I screamed at the sky for an hour. I remember accusing God of being a coward. I remember saying that he's afraid of showing himself to me. I asked for signs. Now I understand just how dumb that is because the Bible's like, no, that's a wicked generation to ask for signs and wonders. Now I don't even want to see them. I've seen some signs and wonders. I've seen some pretty interesting stuff in the heavens, but I don't ask for it anymore. I'm okay with not necessarily seeing some things I've seen in the skies. Oh, ever seen a UFO? No, no, I don't do UFOs because I don't believe that UFOs are little green men, so it kind of messes me up. Bible really messes you up when you start doing angelology because all the theme and things like that, it's like, oh no, no, no. I don't want to think that angels just decided to appear themselves to me like, hey, what's up, dude? Nah. It's flying on a plane from Pensacola, Florida to South Florida. I don't remember which specific area because I was so distracted by the fact I saw a freaking UFO. So like I look to my left out the little porthole and it's like lightning and this whole time I like have this eerie feeling because I'm like I'm waiting because I'm like dude we're gonna be near a triangle. I'm waiting for something. It's like maybe it was just my mind playing tricks on me. I was going insane, but I swear I saw that little freaking thing just towards the end of the trip, like they're like announcing too. It's like, oh, we're about to go and start getting ready to land and da da da. And I looked over all lazily, having fun now because I'm enjoying the lightning. I think it's all cool. I'm like, man, I wish I brought my camera. Man, I really wish I brought my camera. Then this little freaking light just goes, ooh, and I'm just like, no, 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 no. And nobody was there with me. So it's like, oh, why does the world work like that? Pulling at the seams. So again, it's like for me, I was always being drawn to this metaphysical world, and when I went out to the sky and yelled at God, like I got nothing. That was the first time in my life where I'm like trying to pull out the metaphysical, and I literally just got nothing. And it was like such a letdown. Like I was let down, and I kicked rocks. Even I was like pissed off. I was like, really, really, nothing. Like I gave this my all. My voice is raw. Like I honestly gave it my all. I got on the ground, dude. I'm kissing the ground trying to get to you. Fine, fine. I like start walking back home, and it's like I feel like it was almost supernatural, but maybe it was just grief because of what I really finally didn't believe that there was anything after death. I lost kind of all hope. I remember the most depressing 15 minutes of my life was just like I should have just let myself die. Because I was in a car accident at that point, and I just things. I'm surprised that I got through it just so well. I'm surprised I got through a lot of things in my life pretty well. Um, Hopefully God has better purpose for me than I can see. But yeah, like I just remember being so sad, and I was like, man, I'm actually alone now. Like I have nothing. It was like it was really sad, and it was like yeah, I have a family and stuff like that. It wasn't like I'm alone, but it was like a feeling of like I don't know where to go with my life. I don't know what life means if there's really nothing afterwards. What is? Why did I have to go for all this crap? Is it just to be, I guess, able to go through it? And it was just the weirdest feeling because it was like as I'm walking back and as I'm sinking into this feeling of like empty loneliness, I just was getting like, you know, like man, humanity's got nothing. There's no hope. There's nothing for us. This is it. Like, I guess I was having like a Nietzschean crisis where I was like, oh my god, like what's happening? What is gonna happen to humanity? We're doomed. We're doomed. You know, then there was just this still, steady voice. And it just said, that's how I feel since the beginning. And it's the weirdest feeling because it's like, it wasn't a voice that said that. It was like this feeling that overspoke all the emptiness that I was suddenly feeling that just made it stop. And then I was just like stopped in my tracks. And I remember falling to my knees and focusing on that feeling. And it was like, that's how I feel. I've looked at humanity since the beginning, and I chose this, knowing you all would reject me. It doesn't make it easier. It doesn't make it hard for me because I want to show myself to you all. But how many people are willing to come out to see me? To see how I weep? To see me at my weakest when I am ugly, dressed in furs and skins? People who look for me for my gold and silver. They wish to burn incense for me and offer offerings, but are they for my sake or for their sake? I wish to just be with my people, but they reject me for who I am. I am. And it's like, that's God. Like, that was just the feeling of God. It was the most perfect feeling I've ever had, though the worst feeling ever, because I didn't know what to do with that. I held on to it, but I didn't want to, but I did. It was like a burning bush moment for me, but the burning bush was in my heart, and I ran from it. I hid it. I watched all of like Bible sermons, and I was like, "What do you want me to do?" And it was like, "Well, just keep doing what you're doing." Like, what? Like, like I realized it's so dumb for me how I was acting like I was in Nazi Germany or something. Like I was just hiding from like everybody. The fact that I think I found God. It's like I'm sitting there like, what should I do, God? What do you want me to do? I'm reading the Bible. I'm going back to church again. What's next? And I think that's, the interference of God number two, when I'm so used to wanting to expect, and I was expecting, God number one, call it, do this, and the moment of January of blah blah blah, and then this will happen. And yeah, I had those moments, but it definitely wasn't right then. And I just remember like the things that started to build me up in those psychedelic moments were the build up of, hey, I'm gonna go and talk to people about my faith and stuff like that, and try to stand up for it. Now, here's the thing with the psychedelic aspect of it is that as I'm having this feeling of the Holy Spirit stuff, I still was exposed to marijuana, I still was exposed to drinking, I still was exposed to all kinds of psychedelics. I just didn't partake in them as often. Specifically because when I partook with them, it was usually at parties, and I had no way of being able to really do anything with the high other than just out for a couple hours. And I hated that feeling of being forced into my body. I wanted to feel like I could have something more out of the experience. And so what happened is, fiendishly, like a scientist I think I am, I would just basically go up to people and be like, hey, I'll hang out with you guys for a bit. I'm going to go trip and go into a different area. And I'd go off on my own, pop on a sermon, and just have like a 5 hour long acid trip. The experiences I've had with, I've had acid, I've had ecstasy, I've had, uh, what else? Oh, of course I have shrooms, but I've had a couple of experimental things. I don't really fool around too much, just things that I've had from trusted sources who get them from trusted sources. Usually it's at least primary. And I try to do them in the most scientific way possible, so it's helped me a lot. Because when I did them scatterly as I got them from the club, oh god, it was horrible. I can understand, and I've seen the demonic in people who are on those kind of drugs. I've seen people on ketamine just allow things to happen to them and do things to people that are just, even in my most depraved moments, I don't think I'm actually capable of doing what I've watched people do. I think for me that's evidence enough of why I can't understand the world sometimes, because I tried to understand evil and I allowed myself to fall into so many areas of evil and watch people do so many things that I can't understand it, but I understand evil is sin, and it is a decision that people make to continue in behaviors of sin. So I'm not a fool to the evils of man. Fuck. Especially being in the military. Even though I didn't see combat, I definitely saw a lot of evil in of people and a lot of hubris, a lot of bureaucracy. Um, Actually, benefit of the military is it exposed me to Robert Heinlein, not through Starship Troopers, but actually through Time Enough for Love and the Methuselah children's series. I actually like Robert Heinlein's Methuselah children's series the most. Starship Troopers, I still haven't finished, so that's a weird fact. In terms of, I'm a conservative that doesn't actually mm, really care much for Starship Troopers. I'm actually into Heinlein for his futurism in a different context. His futurism towards family, the human exploration, or the human exploratory spirit, and the idea of counter utopianism. In fact, Heinlein actually, I would say, was the first person who made me really decide for a Christian worldview because in his projection, even though his character is more agnostic or kind of rejects God, it makes sense because he's immoral, basically. A lot of the characters in there have escaped death, so they kind of try to push God out of their mind. But they've seen death enough that they kind of expect that there is something out there. So they treat it like that. And the decision, the main plot of the last, or at least the last book I read in terms of Time Enough for Love, was that they are about to they're about to commit to an exodus, like away from the best parts of humanity, all the technology, all of the security, the comfort they can want. And I remember a quote that really stuck with me even to this day. It's from one of the characters, I think Urathal, Weatherall, something, 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 the third, something. Bunch of weird character names, all aristocratic B. But the character's like, look, I've been basically the super president, world governor, antichrist of this whole planet for like 500 years, and I haven't. Nobody's had a complaint. Like, not even so much as a traffic change or a policy decision. Everybody's so content with my role, I can do whatever I want. And I don't like that. This is not healthy for us. They're not healthy like this. This is not healthy for our species. And it's like, that's so counterproductive to everything that you hear today. It's so counterproductive to what we're taught in science today. It's seen as a bad thing for humanity to live on the frontier, to have to actually pay homage to something beyond, to a creator, in order to live out there in space. Um, but Heinlein has a decent amount of psychedelicness too. And again, that drew me into this idea that there's two aspects to psychedelics. You have the casual use, you have the use of psychedelics. Sorry, I have back spasms, so I'm sitting down hurts. Um, you have psychedelic use for casual recreation, not even recreation in the sense of spiritual use, but recreation for the use of letting loose. And then you have psychedelics for the exploratory experience of the human mind and with the metaphysical. Sorry, this cold freaking butt. Um, Played around with both and experimented with both. The second option I think is more preferable. I basically locked myself in a room for 6 months studying hardcore first century Christian culture. I got a lot into Greek and Latin at the time, and it got a little bit into Aramaic, not like in learning it, but in sense of through Strong's concordance and learning like what words meant and stuff, and trying to get a contextual basis for my Christianity. But at the same time, I was still going to the Church of Nazarene. What really got me going to Christianity in the first place was listening to Seventh Day Adventist radio broadcasts. So for me, I had this kaleidoscopic mesh of Christian influences. So, like, even when I think of the idea of being part of a Christian body, I think of it as a neuron. I'm probably more of a neuron, part of a neuron cluster of neurons. I'm probably going to meet other neurons like me um, further along in my life. And there are other people who, are hearts. They're part of the heart. They're part of, the stomach. They're part of, the feet, the skin, as an organ itself. So there are a lot of Christians who are just skin deep Christians. Why should we hate them for it? If anything, we should just nurture the skin, give them lotion and some olive oil and some baby powder and slap them on their way. Maybe rub some milk on them. I've heard milk's good for the skin. Anyways, smart out this aside, um, I think that doing that was healthy for me in the sense that it forced me to go through a lot of ego deaths, a lot of forced it forced me to have to actually come to account with God because there were so many things I didn't want to admit to God that I was scared to do, that I was scared to learn about, that I was scared to accept about my life, my family, about the future of this country. And there are a lot of prayers that I had that just put me on the path that I am on now. And I would say the psychedelics helped me to deal with a lot of things that honestly I wouldn't have been able to deal with. And through that, I was able to finally realize, like, okay, I'm ready to go to therapy. So the caveat to that, though, is that a lot of that's for microdosing, a lot of that's for casual application of psychedelic um, stimulants and stimulation against my within my environment. So I'll use, I'll listen to a sermon while I read, the Bible or something. Or no, like let's say a better metaphor would be like, or a better not metaphor, but example would be pretty much what I would do is I'd listen to a sermon. I would listen to something like a, listen to like music, like a piano or some type of in like slow, methodical melody, and then I would have a stimulant in me, and then I'd be praying, ignoring the whole thing, and then trying to pause it and have conversations with God that whole time. I think it helped a lot. Now, one of the issues that I do think I've seen is that psychedelics seems to draw people into more of themselves. So if you're somebody who's naturally not trying to find God, I don't think it's going to help you take psychedelics. Um, if you're somebody who likes taking psychedelics so you lose touch with your body, that's not going to help you. At least for the purposes I think psychedelics should be used for, at least any Christian would ever go near it, which I don't encourage. Uh, that use I think would be through communal, which you guys mentioned. But I say communal in the sense that you need people who are sober in order to supervise these trips, and people who are well versed in apologetics and good at comforting people who may have sudden trauma, PTSD, or any type of negative influence suddenly drawn out of their subconscious. Uh, I've had plenty of experiences like that with people who are having just really bad trips and you just have to sit them through it. Oh, sorry, guys. I really can't breathe. So I'm going to cut this short. Uh, Paul, if you do want to have more of like a conversation on these experiences, I'll gladly go into more detail about individual psychedelic trips on the psychedelics. But this is my overview on it, kind of on the general. It's my rough summary, in a sense, an outline of what I would kind of talk about at length at different points and different times later on. Coming at from somebody with experience, kind of on the bad side, and a few good sides of it. I don't think it's all bad. Sorry, guys. My problem is, I don't think it's healthy for just anybody to take it. So I think that if it was in a communal environment, it'd be something like not a Sunday thing. Sunday should just be left like it is. But if everybody wanted to, you'd go on like a Saturday. You guys would pray. You'd have your ceremonial, communion and stuff like that, and then you'd microdose. Few people would microdose at a time. Those people would be prayed over, and you basically work things through them. Now, I think when it comes to having bad trips and stuff like that, that would be a perfect experience for having, not in the sense of exorcism, but through what I've experienced on psychedelics, dealing with bad trips and dealing with chaotic presences and treating upon myself, I would say that the benefit of having other people around is that they can work it you through that experience. They can talk you through it. So the idea is you want to
Sorry, I'm really can't breathe. So the hope is that you want to actually like not expose everybody to it. Basically, do it selectively through small trips, and you don't want to force anybody to do it. So it's not a collective thing, but you do have the experience collectively, and everybody goes around and actually spends time with you. You use that time to connect with God.